This happened when I was 32. It was New Year's Eve, 2019, and I still think about it every year. I worked night security at an office complex outside Portland. 4 buildings: tech startups, insurance companies, accounting firms. The place cleared out by 6 every night. My job was simple: walk the perimeter twice per shift, check all the doors, make sure nothing looked wrong, report anything unusual. I'd been doing it for 3 years by that point. Easy work, quiet. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady and I didn't mind being alone. Most nights I'd do my rounds and spend the rest of the time in the guard booth watching shows on my phone or reading. New Year's Eve was always the easiest shift of the year. Nobody worked late on New Year's Eve. No cleaning crews came through, no maintenance, just empty buildings and empty parking lots. I actually volunteered for the shift every year because the holiday pay was double and I didn't have anywhere else to be anyway. No family nearby, no girlfriend, just me. I got there around 9 p.m. and settled into my usual routine. Checked the log from the day shift. Everything normal. Made some coffee in the break room. Started my first round at 10. The complex was laid out in a square. Building A through D. I always went clockwise. A, B, C, D, then back to the guard booth. Each building had multiple entrances, but only the main doors were supposed to be accessible. The side doors were emergency exits. Alarmed, locked from the outside. Everything looked normal until I got to Building C. The side door was propped open with a brick, not forced. The door wasn't damaged. Someone had just placed a brick there to hold it open. I stood there for a second trying to figure it out. The alarm wasn't going off, which meant someone had disabled it from inside before propping the door. I radioed my supervisor. He was at some party downtown. I could hear music and people talking in the background. He sounded annoyed that I'd called. Told me to remove the brick, lock the door, and log it. Probably just a smoker who forgot to grab it on their way out, he said. Happens all the time. Made sense. I'd seen people prop doors open before when they stepped out for a cigarette break. I tossed the brick into the landscaping and pulled the door shut. Tested it. Locked. Continued my rounds. Building D looked fine. Everything else was secure. Got back to the guard booth around 10:30. Logged the incident. Poured another coffee. Put on a podcast. At 1 a.m. I started my second round. Same route. Clockwise. When I got to Building C, the brick was back. Same door, same position. I just stood there staring at it. Someone had to have placed it there between my rounds. That meant they knew my schedule. I walked that route at 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. every single night. Same time, same path. Anyone watching for even a couple days would know exactly when I'd be gone. I picked up the brick and looked at it closer. Nothing special, just a regular red brick. Could have come from anywhere. This time I didn't just toss it aside. I walked it all the way across the lot to a dumpster and threw it inside. Then I went back and checked the door. Still locked. I pulled out my phone and checked the security camera system. We had cameras covering most of the complex, but that specific door wasn't in view. Just a blind spot in the coverage. I called my supervisor again. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message saying the brick had been placed back, and I thought someone might be testing our security. He didn't call back. I finished my rounds, but I felt uneasy now. Kept looking over my shoulder. The complex felt different, less empty, more like someone was out there watching. I decided to change my timing. Instead of waiting until my scheduled 4 a.m. round, I went back out at 2:30. Wanted to catch whoever it was off guard. The brick wasn't there. Door was still locked. I felt a small wave of relief. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe seeing me remove it twice was enough to make them move on. I was walking back toward the guard booth when I saw headlights. A dark sedan, maybe dark blue or black. Hard to tell under the sodium lights. It was cruising slowly through the employee parking lot. Not speeding, not stopping. Just rolling through at maybe 5 miles per hour. I watched it disappear down the access road that led back to the main street. The complex was gated. You needed a key card to get in after hours. Either someone had a card, or they'd followed another vehicle in earlier in the day and had been waiting in the lot this whole time. My heart was beating faster now. I went back to the guard booth and locked myself inside. Watched the monitors. Nothing moved. At 4 a.m. I did my scheduled round. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself it was nothing. The brick was back. This time I left it. I wanted to see what would happen. Wanted to catch whoever was doing this. I went back to the guard booth and positioned myself by the window where I had a partial view of that side of Building C. Turned off all the lights inside so I wouldn't be visible. Waited. 4:15, nothing. 4:30, nothing. 4:45, still nothing. Around 5 a.m. the sky started getting lighter, that purple-gray color right before sunrise. That's when I saw movement. A figure walked across the lot toward Building C. Calm, not hurrying, not looking around, just walking like they belonged there. They went straight to the door, didn't hesitate, pulled it open and stepped inside. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Gave the dispatcher the address, told her someone had just broken into one of the buildings, described what I'd seen. She asked if I was safe. I said yes. I was in a locked booth with a clear view of the exits. She said units were on the way and to stay where I was. I kept watching the building. Didn't see anyone come back out. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. 3 patrol cars. They came in quiet, lights off. I met them outside and explained everything. The brick, the pattern, the person I'd just seen enter the building. They told me to wait by their cars while they cleared the building. It felt like forever, but it was probably only 15 minutes. Then one of the officers came back out and asked me to come with him. They'd found her on the 3rd floor of Building C, sitting at a desk in one of the empty offices. The computer in front of her wasn't even turned on, just a dark screen. She was just sitting there in the dark, staring at it. She was young, mid-20s maybe. Long dark hair pulled back, wearing black pants and a black hoodie. She had a backpack next to the chair. The officers had her in handcuffs out in the hallway when I got up there. She wasn't fighting, wasn't crying, wasn't saying anything. Just staring straight ahead with this blank, empty expression. One of the officers pulled me aside, asked if I knew her, if she worked for any of the companies in the complex. I said no, I'd never seen her before. Didn't recognize her at all. He said they'd searched her backpack, found a notebook inside. He showed it to me. Pages and pages of drawings, sketches of the office complex from different angles, detailed floor plans of all 4 buildings, notes about camera positions, door locations, which ones were alarmed and which weren't, and my schedule, written out in neat, careful handwriting, the entire month of December, what time I arrived, what time I did each round, how long I spent in each area, what route I took. There were notes about my car, too, the make and model, my license plate number, where I usually parked. I felt sick looking at it. The officer said they'd found her car parked in a residential neighborhood about 3 blocks from the complex. When they searched it, they found more notebooks in the trunk. Photographs of me leaving work in the morning, time-stamped, different days, different angles. There were also notes about where I lived, what grocery store I went to, what gas station I used. She'd been watching me for weeks, maybe longer. They arrested her for criminal trespassing and stalking. I had to give a formal statement, answer questions, sign paperwork. They said I'd probably have to testify if it went to trial. I left when my shift ended at 6 a.m., didn't go straight home. Just drove around for a while trying to process what had happened. I called in sick for the next week. Couldn't bring myself to go back. When I finally did return, my supervisor had installed a new camera covering that door. He also told me to call him immediately if anything else seemed off. Day or night, didn't matter what time. I thought that was the end of it. She was in custody, she'd been arrested. It was over. But 3 months later I got a letter in the mail. It came to my apartment, my home address. No return address on the envelope, just my name and address written in neat, careful handwriting. I opened it standing in my kitchen. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me sitting in the guard booth. I was looking down at my phone. The photo was taken from outside through the window. You could see the timestamp in the corner. December 31st, 2019, 9:47 p.m. 13 minutes before I found the brick for the first time. I turned the photo over. On the back, someone had written 5 words in that same careful handwriting. You were supposed to find it at midnight. I took it to the police the next day, showed them the envelope, the photo, the message. They said she was still in custody awaiting trial. There was no way she could have sent it. It must have been mailed before she was arrested. They said they'd look into it, but there wasn't much they could do. No threat was made. No crime was committed by sending a photo and a weird message. I asked what it meant. You were supposed to find it at midnight. Find what? The brick? Why midnight specifically? They didn't have answers. I moved to a different state 3 months after that. Broke my lease, changed jobs, changed my phone number, started over. I don't work security anymore. I don't even like being out late at night. I still don't know what she wanted. What was supposed to happen at midnight? Who took that photograph? Who sent that letter? But I think about it every New Year's Eve when midnight gets close. This happened when I was 26. It was New Year's Eve 2021, and I still think about it every year. I was driving from Phoenix to Flagstaff to spend New Year's with my college roommate and a couple other friends. It's about a 2-hour drive, mostly highway through the desert and then up into the mountains as you get closer to Flagstaff. I'd made the drive dozens of times over the years. It was familiar, easy. I left around 8 p.m., figured I'd get there around 10 with plenty of time to hang out before midnight. The weather was clear, roads were good. Traffic was light because most people were already where they wanted to be for the night. The first hour was completely fine. I had a playlist going, windows cracked because I liked the cold air. I was actually looking forward to the drive. There's something peaceful about highway driving at night when you're headed somewhere good. But about 45 minutes outside of Flagstaff, I noticed a truck behind me. A white pickup, older model, maybe from the 90s. It was staying about 3 or 4 car lengths back. Consistent distance. I didn't think much of it at first. Lots of people were probably heading north for New Year's. Same direction, same highway. Nothing weird about that. But then I changed lanes to pass a slow-moving RV. The truck changed lanes right after me. When I merged back into the right lane, the truck did too. Same distance behind me, same speed. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People follow the flow of traffic, stay in the same lane as the cars around them. It's normal. But something in my gut said to test it. I slowed down gradually, dropped to about 10 under the speed limit, watched my rearview mirror. The truck slowed down too, matched my speed, stayed that same distance back. I sped back up, went about 15 over. The truck sped up, still there. My heart started beating faster. I tried to get a look at the driver, but the headlights were too bright in my mirror. Just a silhouette behind the wheel. Couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. Couldn't see any details. I grabbed my phone from the cup holder and called my friend Sarah. She answered on the second ring. I could hear music and people laughing in the background. I said, "I think someone's following me." She asked if I was sure. I said I didn't know, but something felt really wrong. She said, "Get off at the next exit. Drive to a gas station or somewhere with people. If they follow you off the highway, you'll know for sure." The next exit was about 5 miles ahead. I stayed in the right lane and tried to act normal. Put my turn signal on early. Hands steady on the wheel even though they wanted to shake. I took the exit. The truck took it too. My stomach dropped. The area was rural. No gas stations visible from the off-ramp. Just a 2-lane road cutting through empty desert with scattered brush and a few trees. I could see some lights in the distance, maybe a mile or 2 down the road. I headed toward them. Sarah stayed on the phone, told me to keep talking, asked where I was, said she was pulling up a map on her laptop to find somewhere safe. The lights turned out to be a rest stop, small building with bathrooms, a couple vending machines under an awning, picnic tables. There was one other car parked there, a sedan, sitting in the far corner of the lot away from the lights. I pulled into a spot directly under one of the bright overhead lights, as close to the building as I could get. The truck pulled in behind me but didn't park in a normal spot. It stopped at an angle about 30 feet away. Sarah said, "Don't get out of the car." She was calling the police right now, giving them my location. I sat there with my engine running and doors locked, watching the truck in my rearview mirror. Nobody got out. The headlights stayed on, just pointing at my car. A few minutes went by. They felt like hours. Then the sedan in the corner started up and drove away. Now it was just me and the truck in an empty rest stop in the middle of nowhere. That's when the truck started moving again. Slowly it crept forward, repositioning itself. It pulled up directly behind my car, right behind me, blocking me in. I shifted into reverse, gripped the wheel, ready to ram my way out if I had to. Then I saw red and blue lights, flashing lights coming up the access road, a state trooper. The truck immediately backed up, fast, swung around in a sharp turn and sped out of the rest stop back toward the highway entrance. The trooper hit his lights and tried to follow, pulled a U-turn, but by the time he got turned around, the truck was already gone. The officer pulled up next to my car and got out. He was older, maybe in his 50s. He approached my window carefully. I rolled it down. I was shaking, could barely get words out. He asked if I was okay, if I'd gotten a look at the driver or the license plate. I said no. Everything happened too fast. The headlights were too bright to see anything. He nodded, said I wasn't the first person to report being followed on this stretch of highway. There'd been multiple calls over the past few weeks. White pickup truck, following cars, especially women driving alone at night. They'd been trying to catch whoever it was, but the truck always disappeared before they could get close enough. He asked where I was headed. I told him Flagstaff. He said he'd escort me to the city limits, make sure I got there safely. The rest of the drive I kept checking my mirrors. The trooper stayed right behind me the whole way, lights on. When we reached Flagstaff, he flashed his lights once and turned around. I made it to Sarah's apartment just after 11. She was waiting outside for me when I pulled up. I got out of the car and just started crying. All the fear I'd been holding in came out at once. We went inside. She made me tea. I tried to calm down. We didn't talk much about it that night. I didn't want to ruin everyone's New Year's. Tried to act normal, watched the ball drop, had a drink, went to bed. But a few weeks later, I saw a news article shared on Facebook. A woman had been found unconscious on the side of Highway 17, about 20 miles south of where I'd been followed. She'd been run off the road by a white pickup truck, forced into a ditch. She was in the hospital with serious injuries, broken ribs, concussion. She told police the truck had followed her for miles before forcing her off the road. They never caught who did it. As far as I know, they still haven't. The woman recovered, but she couldn't remember much. Just the white truck, the headlights in her mirror, then nothing. I don't drive alone at night anymore. I just don't. And I definitely don't take that highway. If I need to go to Flagstaff, I leave during the day, or I find someone to drive with me. I think about how close it was. If that trooper had been 5 minutes later, if that other car hadn't been at the rest stop, if I'd been completely alone, I don't know what would have happened, but I think I know. This happened when I was 29. It was New Year's Eve 2020, and I still think about it every year. I was living in a small apartment complex in suburban New Jersey, just outside Newark. It was one of those older buildings from the 70s, 3 stories, maybe 20 units total, brick exterior, small parking lot. Most of my neighbors were older couples or single people who kept to themselves. Quiet building. I liked it that way. New Year's Eve that year was different for everyone because of COVID. Everything was shut down. No bars, no clubs, no parties. People were just staying home. My plan was simple. Watch the ball drop on TV, have a couple beers, go to bed. Nothing special. Around 9 p.m. I heard knocking at my door. Not aggressive, just a normal knock. 3 taps. A pause. 3 more taps. I walked over and looked through the peephole. There was a woman standing there I didn't recognize. She looked like she was maybe in her 30s, wearing a winter coat and jeans, holding her phone in one hand. I opened the door but kept the chain on, asked if I could help her. She said her car had broken down in the parking lot and her phone had just died. Asked if she could use mine real quick to call roadside assistance. Her voice was calm, polite, maybe a little frustrated but not overly so. I hesitated for just a second. Something about the situation felt slightly off, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. She seemed genuine enough. Cold, tired, stressed about her car situation. Nothing obviously wrong. I said, "Okay, wait here." Closed the door. Went to grab my phone from the coffee table. When I came back and opened the door to hand it to her, I noticed something. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, down the hallway toward my bedroom. Just for a second. Then her eyes came back to me. She took the phone, said thank you, stepped back a couple feet from the door. I stayed in the doorway and watched. She dialed a number, held it to her ear, waited, then started talking to someone. Roadside assistance, it sounded like. She gave them the address of the complex, described her car. A blue Honda, she said, parked near the east entrance. The call lasted maybe 2 minutes. She handed the phone back, said they'd be there in about an hour. Then she asked if she could wait in the lobby downstairs since it was cold outside and she didn't want to sit in her car with no heat. I said sure. The lobby was heated and had chairs. Made sense. She thanked me again and walked toward the stairwell at the end of the hall. I closed my door, locked it, went back to the couch. But I couldn't focus on the TV. Something kept nagging at me, the way she'd looked past me into my apartment. That pause before she thanked me, like she was thinking about something else. About 20 minutes later, there was another knock. Same pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I got up and checked the peephole. It was her again. I opened the door, chain still on. She said the tow truck was going to take longer than they thought, closer to 2 hours now. Then she asked if I had any water, said she wasn't feeling well, felt dizzy. She did look pale. I said, hold on. Went to the kitchen, filled a glass with tap water, brought it back to the door. She took it and drank the entire thing without stopping. Didn't even pause for breath, just drank it all in one go. She handed the glass back, thanked me quietly, turned and walked back toward the stairs. I closed the door and locked it. Now I felt genuinely uneasy. Something was definitely wrong. I couldn't explain it, but every instinct I had was telling me something wasn't right. Around 10:45, I decided to go downstairs and check the parking lot. Told myself I was just being a good neighbor, making sure she was okay, that the tow truck had arrived. When I got down to the lobby, it was empty. The chairs were empty, nobody there. I walked over to the front doors and looked out at the parking lot. I didn't see anyone. No tow truck, no woman standing around waiting. I pushed open the door and walked outside into the cold. Went over to the east side of the lot where she'd said her car was parked. There were only 3 cars there, and I recognized all of them. They belonged to tenants. I'd seen them every day for months. No blue Honda. I walked around the entire complex, checked every parking area, every entrance. Nothing. No broken down car. No woman. No tow truck. I went back inside feeling confused. Started thinking maybe she'd gotten help some other way. Maybe a friend came and picked her up. Maybe the tow truck came earlier than expected and I just missed it somehow. I knocked on a couple neighbors' doors. An older man on the second floor answered. I asked if he'd seen a woman in the building tonight, maybe waiting in the lobby. He said no. He'd been home all evening, been watching TV, hadn't seen anyone. I went back upstairs to my apartment, started thinking I was just being paranoid, making something out of nothing. But when I got to my door, I stopped. It wasn't fully closed. It was open just a crack, maybe an inch, maybe less. I always lock my door when I leave, always. It's automatic. I don't even think about it anymore. I just do it. I pushed the door open slowly, stood in the doorway, listened. Nothing. No sound, no movement. I stepped inside carefully, looked around. Everything appeared normal at first glance. The TV was still there. My laptop was still on the table where I'd left it. My wallet was on the counter by the door. Nothing was obviously missing or moved. But then I walked into the kitchen and I saw it. The glass. The one I'd given her. It was sitting in the exact center of the kitchen counter, placed perfectly, deliberately, upside down. I knew I hadn't put it there. When she handed it back to me, I'd walk straight to the sink and put it in with the other dishes. I remembered doing it. I remembered the sound it made when I set it down. My heart started pounding. I went room by room, checked the bathroom, checked the bedroom, looked in the closets, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nobody there. But in my bedroom, I noticed something else. My dresser drawers were open. Not wide open, just slightly. Like someone had opened them and then closed them quickly, but hadn't pushed them all the way shut. I always close my drawers completely. Always. I grabbed my phone and called 911. Told the dispatcher someone had been in my apartment. That I thought they might have still been inside when I came back, but I'd checked and couldn't find anyone. She said officers were on the way. 2 patrol officers showed up about 20 minutes later. I explained everything. The woman at my door, the phone call, the water. How I went downstairs and she wasn't there. How my door was open when I came back. The glass on the counter, the drawers. They walked through the entire apartment, checked every room, looked at the windows, the door, looking for signs of forced entry. They didn't find anything. One of the officers said it was possible I'd forgotten to lock the door when I went downstairs. Said it happens. People get distracted. And maybe I'd moved the glass to the counter without really thinking about it. Muscle memory. Autopilot. But I knew I hadn't. I knew what I'd done. They took a report anyway. Got my statement. Said they'd check with building management to see if there were security cameras that might have caught something. Told me to call if anything else happened. I didn't sleep that night. At all. I sat on my couch with a knife from the kitchen next to me. Watched the door until the sun came up. A few days later, I ran into the same older man from the second floor. We were both getting mail. He mentioned that he'd heard from another tenant that someone had been going around the building on New Year's Eve, knocking on doors, asking to use phones, asking for water. He said a woman on the first floor had let someone in. Let them inside her apartment while she went to grab her own phone to see if she could help with something. When she came back from her bedroom, she found her bedroom door standing wide open. She lived alone. She always kept that door closed. Nothing was taken from her apartment either. Nothing was broken, but her jewelry box had been moved. It was usually on her dresser. She found it on her bed, just sitting there in the middle of the bed. I moved out of that building 2 months later, broke my lease, paid the early termination fee. I didn't care. I couldn't stay there anymore. I still don't know what that woman wanted, what she was looking for, what she was doing in my apartment while I was downstairs looking for her in the parking lot. But I think about that glass all the time, upside down, centered perfectly on the counter, like a message, like she was telling me she'd been there, that she'd been inside, that she could get in whenever she wanted. I think about what might have happened if I'd come back upstairs sooner, if I'd walked in while she was still there. I don't know, and I'm glad I don't know, but I think about it every New Year's Eve.